To stay relevant in the marketplace, organizations have to divide the work into three categories: work that will be done by technology, work that will be done by humans, and the third category is work that will be done by humans with technology. My name is Abhijit Bhaduri, and this is exactly what I do for my clients. I help them figure out which of the pieces of work has the highest strategic value when you do it with technology, and what is the work that you could do with technology, but you don't want to do with technology. You're better off doing it with humans. So, talent and technology are the two factors that shape the world of work, and this is what the show is all about. So, let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. My name is Abhijit Bhaduri, and I work as a talent strategist, helping organizations shape their talent decisions and choices in the AI economy. My guest today is Biju Dominic. I've been a big fan of his writing, his columns, and all the wisdom that he brings forth, which helps us really think about choice architecture. How do we design things that really make sense in today's day and age? Biju has also worked in an advertising firm, which he and we both shared. We were both at Mudra. And then thereafter, Biju now is working as the chief evangelist for Fractal.ai. It's a company which has done interesting work in several areas. Biju leads a team which focuses on the intersection of behavioral science and AI. It's a new field. Who better than Biju to talk about all this? So let's get into the conversation.
Thank you, Abhijit, and really look forward to having a very interesting chat with you today.
I want to start by saying that there is this whole belief that in organizations we put a great premium on what we can measure. So if you can't measure it, it's useless. Then there's this whole myth that if you turn everything into numbers, you are going to actually induce all the things that we can measure are the useful things. Everything you can't measure is useless. Where do emotions fit in the useful category or the useless category?
I think you asked a very relevant question. Emotions and the role of emotions. Now, if you ask the traditional Western philosophical approach to emotions, right from René Descartes himself said, emotions, no, that's not really good in decision making, and you should actually be rational and keep emotions away. And so the Cartesian philosophy was that emotions are something that interferes into a good, rational, sort of a decision making. But one of the first times where scientifically it was disproven was by another a neuroscientist by name Antonio Damasio. And he wrote a book and he said Descartes error, basically said, hey, René Descartes, you're wrong. Because he studied people who, due to accidents and others, and the most famous of it, a lot of people have heard of the accident that happened to this man called Phineas Gage, where an iron rod went through his left eye and came out from there. It is regarded as the most quoted, incident in the medical history. So when that iron rod went by, and he didn't die post that incident, he lived on. But there was a fundamental shift in his behavior. And the doctor who was observing him, and even much later when he died, he kept his, his skull, and it still is kept in the Harvard Medical Museum. And Antonio Damasio, what he did was he reconstructed the brain to know which part of the brain actually got damaged when that iron rod went past, and went through his head. And he realized that the ventral medial prefrontal cortex is an area that got damaged. He also found 11 other patients who also, because of tumor and other problems, the ventral medial prefrontal cortex has got damaged. And in all of them, he found very peculiar behavior, which means they're intelligent enough to analyze things and, in any decision, but they can't take a decision. So finally, in that book, he actually says, if the emotional parts of the brain gets damaged, you cannot take a rational decision. You're just not able to take a rational decision. And that's why he said in that book, and he established that emotions are integral to all human decisions. Now, that's a very significant discovery. Now, I don't think, other than the advertising world where we used to use advertise emotions very well, but overall, in this world of numbers and in this world of AI, we still are not giving enough importance to emotions. Now, Abhijit, let me also give another perspective. Now, assume emotions were bad. Emotions are making human decision making inferior. Then,
Mhm.
evolutionarily, that should have become less and less and less important in human decision making. But no, emotions still continue to be there. And if you look closely, we'll realize, for example, the emotion of fear has actually saved far more human lives than all of modern medicine put together. The
Give me
emotion
an
of fear.
example of that. Give me an example.
I'm just look at the emotion of fear. The emotion of fear is what kept us away from the little rustle in the wind, sorry, in somewhere in the bushes, and you moved away. Okay, that
Hmm.
was a lion. Or there was a height that was somewhere, or a tall tree, and we said, let me not climb it. So we all stayed away from danger because we were fearful. Now, look at the
With
number
which,
of
sorry, no, please continue.
hmm, look at the number of lives that were saved. And assume fear is not there. Now, you worked in organizations, and when you really look at organizations, people who work in foundries and or even people who meet with accidents, why? Because they are not fearful enough. Because if they were fear, they wouldn't have gone near that machine far too close and created that particular accident. So, emotion of fear is actually one of the most useful things in the evolutionary history. So overall, emotions are really, really important facet of human decision making. So just because you can't measure it, just keeping it away, you are not really getting a good grip of human decision making by keeping emotions away.
I was actually going to say that, funnily, when you think about the fact that we have these cars which are so safe now because, they look at everything, that actually encourages risky behavior because, you know that it is so safe that you can, the car will stop. So you take unnecessary risks, and,
Yeah,
that is what causes accidents. So
There is a lot of work on an area called risk compensation, which is enough studies have shown. Assume you wear seat belt and you start wearing, the speed at which you start driving the car actually goes up.
increases.
You had a car didn't have an ABS, but now you have a car with ABS. The speed at which you're driving the car with ABS is actually higher. So, which means when these safe practices come into our life, we start taking more. The safer you start feeling, the more risky behaviors you actually get into. So, that's called the risk compensation. So, that is what causes. So, it doesn't mean that we don't need safe practices. I just want to say how complex the human behavior is. Just because you have a seat belt doesn't mean that you now solved all the problems. So, human behavior is a constantly evolving and changing things, and you need to be at it to really get a good grip of human behavior.
Absolutely. And so, the moment one of those roller coasters has an accident, immediately the, participation in the roller coaster ride drops because, well, people, you might say that I joined the roller coaster ride because it was thrilling. It was thrilling because you were strapped so tight, you knew you can't fall. That's why. So, in some sense, it is not that thrilling when it is so well compensated for. When you think
Exactly.
about a design architecture, choice architecture, which is the work that you do. The question I have is, does neuroscience actually automate the biases that we already have? I mean, we have a bunch of biases. So, is that not possible that AI is going to automate all the biases because it knows exactly what are my biases? So, the more it knows me, the more it can manipulate me, the more it can automate all those, and I'm actually worse off. Is that a valid question?
It is valid, but I think just look at, whenever we speak about biases, we have to say that's the other side of heuristics. And why heuristics? Because it's very clear our human brain does not have the time nor the ability to process so much of information. So evolutionarily, we have always have taken shortcuts. Now, most of the time, those shortcuts work well. There are times when those shortcuts actually do not work, or you take it, tends to make us do wrong decision. That's where biases happen. So heuristics, brain taking shortcuts is an integral part of the way the human, brain functions. There's no doubt about it. Now, the extreme end of AI, when people say is agent to agent relationship, assume you are a retail chain. There is a agent that you create. I'm a consumer. I create an agent for me, and I tell my agent, please check out various agents of shoppers and find out which is the most optimum, the buying list, and I give them, and I buy it for you. Now we think it's all rational, and things are all perfect. But somewhere we know suddenly between you and your competition, you suddenly realize you're losing out for whatever reasons. Now, what will you do? Suddenly you will actually tell your agent to say that, hey, there is a shortage. It's almost like only two seats left. So you will tell your agent to start, let me call it, cheat and give the wrong information. Now, what do I do as a consumer agent? I'll tell, hey, please find out there are people now cheating. Every time they're creating scarcity, doesn't mean there's scarcity. So very soon, although we say agent to agent, you're going to have your set of agents with their biases, because biases and imperfections are the way in a market scenario people will try to compete. And I will have agents that are trying to figure out what are the biases and what are the smart things my shoppers, whatever companies, agents are trying to do. So right now we are saying human to human biases. Very soon all those biases will get into the
It
agents
has
of
to, yeah,
respective people.
yeah, yeah.
It will.
Because that's why we choose one particular LLM versus the other, because the one which understands me a little more is better. And imagine doing that at large scale. So that's
Exactly.
what happens. Um, when you look at organizations actually rarely use the science which is already known about, or all the studies which have been done about experiments and everything. It still doesn't. I want to particularly narrow it down to learning and development. We talk so much about making learning which is exciting, that learning is natural to people. As kids, we like to learn. Yet why is it so hard to get people to upskill in organizations? What are we doing wrong?
Oh, I think you put a very interesting point, Abhijit. As kids, it's very easy for us to learn, and we learn very fast. But as we grow up, I think our ability to learn is becomes less and less and less. And as we grow older, is almost the number of vocabulary or the number of new words that we learned, say, post our age of 20 or so, is dramatically low as compared to the first 5 years. Now, there is a biological reason for it. And I think the biological reason is got to do with our brain. Because one of the questions I often ask is our human brain geared to learn? And my answer is not exactly. Because the brain is the most energy optimizing machine that you can ever find. It works at about 20 watts. And for it to learn means it has to absorb, it has to process, and that means he has to burn up more and more glucose. End of the day, we fill up our glucose only three times: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, if you start thinking too much, you start feeling hungry because you're burning up more energy. We don't. And more so, unlearning. That means someone who's now 10 years worked in an organization, has learned certain things, and he's learned. Now, for him to unlearn and start learning something new, his brain will find all sort of excuses not to use up more energy. So there is a biological problem that the human brain is not geared to learn, whereas a child's brain, yes. But as we grow and older, our brain is just loves to deal with status quo. And status quo bias is an integral part of the way the brain goes about. Using the same old knowledge, we like to continue taking the same set of decisions. And we're very, very comfortable learning new things, trying out new things. The brain doesn't want to do it. And organizations need to be aware of this biological barrier that is there towards learning. And first of all, you won't get it when you do a normal research because you can't really say, no, no, with AI coming in, new technology coming in, I'm not willing to learn. Of course, in all the interviews, so all the interview, they say, of course, we love to learn. Learning is the future, change is the
Yeah,
constant.
exactly.
They'll say a lot of things, but the say versus do gap, picking up a new book, picking up a new article, pick there'll be a huge say versus do gap as far as learning is concerned. And as a person who's led learning across the various organizations, how tough it is to get the
Oh,
employees to
completely.
learn new things.
And it's also because there is a degree of sadness that we experience when we leave behind what we have always had. I mean, the expertise that I've had. Now you say that I need to learn because that is no longer valid. So there is a grief that we experience that, I'm no longer doing what I'm so good at. And that really is also another barrier that, getting rid of your old identity and take wearing this new identity. It's like getting rid of your favorite t-shirt and wearing something else. We don't give time for that. When you think of the work you've done, um, in the optimism bias, your most famous work perhaps is what you've done with the railways. Give us a quick shorthand view of the railway project that you did, which saved so many lives, which is absolutely incredible. Which is when I first sort of sat down and said, "Wow, this is real world application of saving lives." A lot of people say, "I'm here to change the world." You actually did something which is, well, not change the world, but at least save many lives. Tell us about that.
Yes, you're right. It is actually one of the most talked about projects of ours because the problem was very, very significant. 16 people die every day in Mumbai. Every day, 16 people die in Mumbai, and that is the single largest cause of unnatural death in Mumbai city. As they cross the railway tracks, they get hit by a train and they die. And railway has done all they can to actually prevent that. So they have, RPF trying to stand wherever they think accidents are happening, fine, whatever problem, and fine people who are doing all sort of things have happened. But then that's when they came to us and said, "Hey, can you guys actually find out, and do something about it?" So we looked at the data. And when we looked at the data, one of the things we realized is, unlike what a lot of people thought, the place where people are getting hit by the train is not in the stations. Although a lot of people cross, in the stations. It is all what they call the midsections. Between stations is where these accidents are happening. So we went to those locations. But when we stood in those locations, I think what we realized is that how can someone get hit by a train here? Because you can see a train coming in from both directions almost from a kilometer away. But that led us to ask a question. How can someone get hit by a train that they can see coming towards them? And none of the traditional human behavior theories could explain that. But that's when we went into cognitive neuroscience. And there is a work by Professor Lebowitz from Penn University. He studied and he realized that our human brain has a deficiency. Evolutionarily, our human brain has done and continues to do a good job of judging the speed of small things because evolutionarily we have seen rabbits and deers running and our forefathers could judge the speed of it and throw a stone or a spear. But evolutionarily, we haven't seen large objects move fast. Elephants, giraffes moved very slowly. And our brain started seeing large objects move fast the last 150 years. And in the 600 million year of evolution of the brain, 150 is too short a time to make any impact. So when I'm seeing the train and I think, oh, the train is far, and you start taking steps to cross the railway track. You thought the train is far away, but you have misjudged the speed of that closing distance of the train. And we are misjudging it by close to 40%. So
Wow.
that was, the problem definition. People are getting hit by a train because they can't judge the speed of large objects. Okay, now we have defined the problem. So what should we do? What's the solution? The solution could have been what automotive industry has done. They're written in the rearview mirror, objects in the mirror are closer than what they appear.
You
So
think,
we could
yes.
have, yeah, it's a communication to the conscious mind, telling the conscious mind, and based on it, we could have done it, solved this problem by assuming that I put a board saying that trains are faster than what you think, so be careful. We could have done that. But then we went into another very, very, very important facet for neuroscience, and that's a revolutionary new knowledge about human behavior. Of the 11 million bits of processing we have, only 77 of them, I'm just repeating the number, 77 of them work
11
at a
million
conscious
bits
level.
of processing, 11 million bits of
Yes.
processing in the brain, only 77 million are
No,
dedicated to,
77, just 77 of the
only
11 billion
77 out of 11 million.
work at a conscious level. And M.
Oh my
Zimmerman,
God.
I would request all the listeners, people who are listening to me, to go to M. Zimmerman's paper on it. And it's a revolutionary paper. Now, which means 99.999% of our processing happens at a non-conscious level. Now, look at your position of the leg, your position of your tongue, position of your hand. Nothing was thought through consciously. So we knew that if we have to manage that problem, we had to speak to the non-conscious mind. So we went a bit more deeper and said, okay, how does the non-conscious of our brain judge speed? It took us some time and realized, oh, on a flight, we can't judge the speed. I said, why? Oh, there's no reference point. Then we said, oh, that means to judge speed, we need reference point. So we said, oh, if we give a reference point, then we can improve, people's judgment of the speed. So what did we do? We realized the place where people trespass is constant. We left few of the sleepers, empty. Next 5 sleepers were painted in yellow paints. The next 15 were left empty. The next 5 were painted in yellow color again. Next 15 was left empty. So we have blobs of such 4 to 5 car block of sleepers. Now, when this train comes from there, the speed at which these yellow blobs disappear becomes under a reference for these people. Now, the most interesting is we first did it in a place close to station. And suddenly a train is coming, the man stands back. So he asked him, why did you stand back? No, sir, train is too fast. It's coming very close. Okay. He said, what are those yellow lines are for? I don't know, sir. Where normally we cross on the roads in front of us, there are white lines. This, I think, is not for us, sir. I think it's for motormen, something to do, which means we have influenced his behavior without he
Unconscious.
being conscious. Yes. Now, we did the same thing. We reduced road accidents in India by 69% across various highways. The Bangalore Hyderabad Golden Quadrangle was the first road we took. Multiple roads, we have reduced it up to 69%. So, and right through the final miles work of 19 years now, I think we have always used this deeper understanding of the brain's functioning and have converted that into design. And I think we have actually solved girl trafficking, road accidents, spread of HIV in Africa, people not taking medications in Europe. You mention a human behavior problem, and we've worked across all of them. And in all of them, we have brought in a definite improvement over the traditional ways of dealing with that particular problem.
What are some of the things by which learning and development teams or human resources teams, there is so much of bad press about HR because of their role in firing and all of that. What are some of the things that HR can do to improve its image?
HR, especially since you asked about learning part of it, one, to HR. one of the reasons why HR is having a bad name is because the change management programs which HR has been involved in, and I'm just quoting the HBR article related to that, 65 to 70% of
65%
them fail
fail.
in within immediately, and the article says if you take 6 months, 90% of them fail, which means we are in a profession where we are failing 90% of the time. By the way, not just HR people. I belong to the marketing world. The marketing failure rate is 90%. For example, digital marketing, people said digital marketing. 1994, the click-through rate was about 40%. Now, after that, we added search engine optimization, we added hyper-personalization, we added great computing powers, a lot of things were added. Now, what is the click-through rate in 2023? 0.35, which means the click-through
Wow.
rate in digital advertising has come down more than 100 times reduction. And it's not just marketing. Look at what happened to COVID. Now, people said COVID happened, oh, we need a vaccine. So, vaccine, but it takes 8 to 10 years. And something like HIV, never, we had not even had a vaccine now in 25 years. People said the world will be wiped off. Now, the best of the virologists all came together, the best of the medical experts came together. Within about 3 months, I think they figured out and they said, okay, here is a vaccine. But people said that's not enough. This has to be taken at extremely cold temperatures. The best cooling companies in the world came together and said, we have figured out to take it at minus 20 or minus whatever temperatures. They said that's not
So
enough. It
rational
has to be taken.
choices were done.
Yeah, yeah. And one more, which is the supply chain. He said, oh, it has been taken to every village in the world. People said the UBS and the FedEx came together and said, we have figured it out. So within about 6 months, we had a vaccine sitting in our nearby healthcare center, which normally takes 8 to 10 years. They managed to get it in 6 months' time. But all that we didn't know what to do was, how do you get this man who's sitting at home? Hey, hey, go to the healthcare center. It's a life and death situation. Please take 2 vaccines. We don't know. We don't know how to motivate him. Even in a life and death situation, we don't know. I think the first thing the HR professionals have to agree is and marketing professionals have to agree is there is something wrong with the way, the very theory that we've been practicing, which is this rational man who will listen to everything that we say, and then based on it, his behavior would change, is fundamentally flawed.
Wrong, wrong.
Is wrong. And we have to change it. And that is what you need to do to bring it in. And since you
Uh,
asked the question on learning, for example, what do you do? For example, as I said earlier, as a biological reality, I think training programs and, is almost like as parents telling the kids, study, 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 nothing will happen. So how do you get the employees now more so to learn? I think one of the best examples I would go back is 1900. 1900, in one of the conferences in Europe, there was this mathematician by name David Hilbert. So what he did was, and he told all these great mathematicians who were joined, he said, you're all great mathematicians. Do one thing. Now, these are 23 questions. If you're a great mathematician, now find a solution to any of these questions. The whole of 20th century, the whole mathematical research was all about trying to answer one of the Hilbert's questions. Only 13 of them to this day has been partially answered, which means the importance of questions. So with LLMs and others coming in, trying to teach them answers is not the way to go. Today, what I ask even senior managers in organization is, earlier, oh, who's an expert? Oh, let's go to him. Oh, we'll wait for 2 days to get his appointment. And then he says, okay, tell me what's the problem. And based on his experience, he'll give you an answer. But today, LLMs will give you that answer, whether it's completely right or wrong. So that way of expertise is gone. To me, now the expertise is, can you actually raise the most evocative question in the organization, which makes everybody in the organization, ugh, let me find out, but I won't really prove that I'm really good. The role of evocative questions, which is all about creating a feeling of ignorance. Because unless the feeling of ignorance creates curiosity combined with questions, That is what leads people to learn more and more. So raise questions, raise curiosity, create a feeling of ignorance. And if you do that, the learning, will be an automatic response to that particular situation. Of course, you have to create rituals, you have to create architecture around it. All that will have to happen. Say, for example, in fractal, when you come to fractal, um, you know, you'll find in every floor, Srikant has made sure the first prominent thing you see is the library. Now, and what it clearly sends a signal that this is an organization where learning, reading books is integral to the organization. So architecture is very, very important. And that's why the temples and the churches, for example, they have an architecture, the context, which is all about why is the temple so tall? Why are the cathedral so tall? It is to make you feel that, boss, you are nothing in front of that God. And that feeling of nothingness makes you prostrate in front of the God. So you don't have to write a notice board saying that please prostrate in front of the God. The architecture makes you do that. So the context plays a very important role in creating a learning organization. So there are multiple things, but to me, that culture of ignorance, a culture of evocative questions, possibly would be the most important thing the leaders will have to focus to create a learning culture within your organization.
And there's a similar study which I'm going to put the name of the book in the comments, which actually talks about the evolution of music actually has shifted dramatically based on the architecture where music is being played. So chamber music is exactly that. It's played in a small place, So when you have a quartet or four people playing, it's meant for a certain size of audience. Today, when you play it in a very large auditorium, the kind of music that you play there has to be different. If you miss that whole point, the music doesn't sound the same, and more importantly, it doesn't engage the people. So it's not about your playlist; it's also about the architecture of the place. So
Oh,
there's a lot more that we can.
there's an interesting reverse to it. I think for a moment, I'm forgetting the name. He's one of the most famous the violinist in the world. So what did the Washington Post do was as an experiment. So they got this person to
Joshua
stand, Joshua Bell,
Joshua
and
Bell.
Joshua Bell,
Yes,
yeah, stood in Washington railway station and played. He got some $27, whereas the
correct.
previous day people were paying $100 per seat to play that, and it showed it's not the music. Some people went and complained to the police that band is making too much noise. So it's not the way you enjoy the music. That doesn't really matter. It's the context. So in that major auditorium where people coming in, okay, Joshua Bell here is coming. Oh, great, wonderful. And we'll say that what a brilliant music. Now the same Joshua Bell plays that in the railway station. He's making too much noise. Please ask him to keep quiet. So that's a
Exactly.
difference. And context plays a very, very important role. You're right,
And
Abhijit.
I can't help, give another example of where there is this, somebody in Australia actually had Ed
Hmm.
Sheeran come up, and
Oh,
they were selling $1 tickets to see, 2-minute song of Ed Sheeran, and they called it, it's in a strip joint, so everybody thought it can't be Ed Sheeran. So he says, yeah, just watch, this is the show. And they were getting people to say, do you want to watch Ed Sheeran, play a song? And they said, how much? So I said, $1. And they said, no, we can't. And they were actually, finally a couple, as you can see in that, it's there on YouTube, where the couple
okay.
goes in to watch finally, and they pay $2 and they say, yeah, the curtain goes up. It is Ed Sheeran, and they are completely shocked. And so by the time they realize, they take out the camera and they want to film it, time is over. So they stop. They said, "Can we see it again?" They said, "No, it was just one show, and that this is it." So even when you price, the way you price it
Yeah,
changes how people feel about it. And so a lot of times people say, "Drop the
yeah,
price." It means people will, take it more seriously.
yeah.
Um,
That's right.
What about the emotional architecture of work and workplaces in hybrid environments? It's convenient, but what does it do to the culture of a workplace? How can leaders address this major challenge?
See, right when the COVID happened, in my column, I took a stand saying that work from home is not going to work. And the reason I gave it was from an identity point of view. Because until COVID came in, uh, we never faced a situation where we all have multiple identities. Now, this is sort of an official scenario, so there is an identity, there's a certain dress that you're wearing, there's a certain way we are sitting and talking. But although I'm at home, once this program is over, I'll change it to my casuals and I put my leg up, and that's my home identity. So earlier, depend on the context that we just spoke earlier, each context we had an identity. But never until COVID came in, we had same identity, two identities in the same context. And that's exactly what work from home did to you. So I'm having this particular meeting and suddenly assume I'm a working mother or even as a father, my little kid stands there and then, Papa, Papa, please, please come, help me, let's play with me. Now, this I'm having this conversation with you, which is my work identity, that my little one is calling me, that's my suddenly I'm being pulled into to play my home identity. It's a huge stretching, I mean, huge conflict. And it has never happened because even if I was, a working mother, the moment I put on my sari, put on my official dress, and then get out of the house, and that ritual of travel itself allowed me to get out of my home identity and go to my work identity. Even if my kid was crying, I could ask my servant or my whoever is at home and say, please take care of my child. Even emotionally, I didn't feel that bad because what can I do? I'm so far away. But today, a lot of people with work from home, they say, oh, too many meetings, too much of stress, too much of this. But that's a rationalization. The real reason is the conflict between their work identity and home identity. And I haven't seen too many articles that speaks about this clash of identities. I think that's a huge problem. And we need to be aware of it. That's one. Okay. Assume people are far away, other things, and assume work from home is a reality. Now, uh, today, some of them, and today we ask them, okay, please come to office for 2 days a week. Okay. Now, I often ask the HR managers, what are they coming to office for? If they're
To
working from
work.
home, are they coming to hear now the galis from their bosses in person to work again? No, it should not be. And I think that's where we had to learn from organized religion. Again, I've written this about it by saying, a lot of CEOs, a lot of people said, how will I create a culture? What will I do? They come in for just once a week or once in 2 day, in a month or so. But how do I create a culture? Then I said, look at the organized religion. But what they do is they get their people coming in on a Sunday or on a Friday or on a Saturday. Now, what my team did was to analyze that 1.5 hours of that ritual. What happens? And when you look at it, you realize it's all about bonding, a community creation. That 1.5 hours they come in is all about creating a community feel. So today I would exhort HR managers by saying, if you have a work from home sort of approach, now people should be coming back to office, not to work, but to create that bonding.
Build.
I think that is where, to me, the canteen is actually going to be possibly in the modern offices with work from home, one of the most important places where people relax, people meet new people, sit down and have a coffee or whatever. We need to change. We can't cut paste the old ways of working into new thing and work. So we need to be aware of these changes of identities and changes of context, and we need to redefine ourselves. But as I said, there are good examples of it from organized religion and others who use rituals very well. And to me, organizations have to really use the power of rituals to create a culture. And even if people are going to come in for one day, now what you do in that one day when they come to office is where how you build a strong culture or you fail to create a strong culture. It's up to you.
It is, if you see that, it's the reverse of what happened during COVID. During COVID, we said the same meetings and same rituals. You are having, a coffee meeting, and you having coffee there, and I have coffee here. We think it's, informal chat. It isn't. When the moment you structure it and say, I have 15 minutes of coffee time, two of us having coffee there does not create the same impact as people meeting casually, uh, getting rid of their office identity and talking about stuff, because then I'm no longer talking about, tell me about the project while I'm sipping coffee. That doesn't do anything. You have to build the human relation.
And not just the that face-to-face interaction, Abhijit, because let me two things. One, that face-to-face interaction is not happening in a lot of Zoom meetings. Look at the number of cameras that are on. A
Oh,
lot of the cameras are not
exactly.
on because of why? There's another inherent, not just human tendencies, an animal tendency called territoriality. When I'm in my territory, I'm my boss. Now you are
You
my
can't force
CEO.
me to put this on.
Exactly. And I put a cover out there. So that's a territoriality. So that's why again work from home doesn't make. Now there's another very interesting work in area of called enclothed cognition. And the question I've written again in my column and asked, does the cloth that I'm wearing below the camera angle, does it matter? And enough studies have shown what I'm wearing below this camera angle that you, Abhijit, you're not seeing, but it impacts the quality of this answer and that I'm giving. And I think, and then these are all scientific, well-studied facets about work from home. And I don't think too many HR managers have really gone into the depth of it. And I've told the CEOs, hey, these are all the consequences of our employees working from home, or even to the employees to tell them that what you wear under this matters a lot. So yes, because it impacts you at a non-conscious level, the preparation, the mood, and a lot of those inner workings of your brain matters a lot by this. I think we need to bring in far more science, Abhijit, into this,
Mm.
into human behavior. The good old theories that HR we've been using for the last 40, 50 years is all outdated. It's high time
Absolutely.
we take a lot of learnings from neuroscience. Of course, there are a lot of interesting work on sociology, anthropology, evolutionary biology. We had to bring in all that. I think we had to throw out a lot of those old, outdated human behavior theories.
And as they say, that until you get rid of the old, there is no place for the new, so you cannot do that.
Exactly.
One
Exactly.
of the pieces of trivia is that many years back, I used to read the news for All India Radio. And,
Hmm.
they used to insist that you wear a tie. Mind you, I used to, read the news for the radio, not on television.
Yeah.
And so I just said that, this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, why do I need to wear a tie? Nobody can see what I'm wearing. They don't even know whether I'm wearing a shirt. So he said, it changes the tone of your voice. The formality goes away if you don't have it. So
What a
you are
beautiful
absolutely
example.
right. Yeah, and so lots of times there were lots of jokes about when somebody gets up to get a glass of water during a Zoom call during early COVID days. People would discover that the fellow is wearing a lungi below the shirt, and so this enclosed cognition is such a powerful idea, which is rarely
Yeah.
used, and um, when we think about people, is it true that people who are early in career versus mid-career versus, say, experienced senior pre-retirement people, is one group easier to change than the other? And if so, why?
As I said earlier, as we become more and more experienced, and that experience provides a very important power. And as a HR professional, that experience provides us possibly the most important power that we have, which is expertise power. People coming and asking us for advice, people asking us, for expert opinions about it. Now, after after some time, because of a new technology like AI or something coming in, now you suddenly are telling you, hey, what you knew and what you've been doing for the last 20 years, is actually useless. Or
Yeah.
what you took 2 weeks to do it, now AI can do it in a few minutes time. That's a huge loss of identity because once his expertise power goes away, he is actually no one. Because then what is he? Because all the 25, 30 years of experience that he had, he's now completely a powerless person. Now that's a huge this one for anyone to get anyone to admit it. So the more senior that you go, the more expert that you are, and asking you to unlearn that becomes more and more tougher. Whereas if you are a entry level person, assume they had studied something in college, as soon as they joined the college, no, 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 that doesn't matter. Now, do you want a job? Now learn this. You will sit and learn. And as you said earlier, Abhijit, you said when you're a kid, you actually learn things much
The
faster.
most.
Now, a trainee is nothing but a kid from the corporate world point of view. And that person will learn and absorb a lot of things. But as you become older and older, as we have seen, the amount of vocabulary that you have, all of it declines. The same is in corporate life. So it's much easier to mold and work with junior people. Like in my own team, because this is a lot about combining. That's what my team does in Fractal, combining the powers of neuroscience and artificial intelligence. It is very new. No one else does it. So when I was taking my team, I didn't take anyone more than with 2 to 3 years of experience because I knew someone with 15 years of experience, it's very difficult to mold that person to read a lot of new books on neuroscience and look at AI now in a different way. That won't happen. So my own experience tells me that it's much easier to mold people when they're about 2 to 3 years old into experienced people. And the older you become in an organization is much tougher to change what they've learned until then.
In fact, one of the things that, an observation that I had in one of the previous organizations, all the classes for the junior teams, whether technical training or otherwise, was held inside the campus. There's like a large learning center, so where people would come together.
Mhm.
But then as soon as you hit the senior levels, certainly the CEOs directs, and even a level or two below that, they had to be, they had to go to different places altogether, either at some offsite or something. So somebody was asking me, I said, it's to tell people that no, they're not going there to learn because they know everything. It is just to create the illusion that, okay, they also need to do something, but nobody should know that we are trying to learn. So it is to keep this knowledge away. Um, but
No, I would actually, actually exactly the opposite is what we should do. I often, when take sessions for professors and teachers and all that, I tell them,
have
do you
them
want your
learn
students,
inside.
no, no. Do you want your students to learn? Then you should be seen as the greatest
Seem to be
learner.
learning. Yeah, exactly
You
what
have
I'm
to be
saying.
seen
That
as learner.
have that inside the work, inside
Yeah,
the
exactly.
complex. So everybody turns around and says, "My boss's boss is sitting there to learn something. There must be something value to it." So yeah.
Exactly.
But when you send them away to different places, you are actually killing the whole idea altogether. So, Biju, we are coming to the end of our conversation. Of course, I could just chat much longer with you, but I'm going to ask you for recommendations if somebody wants to get started to understand, what is this whole field of that we should be learning about. And it's not just HR people, anyone curious. What are some of the books that you would recommend? Let's start with what are you reading now? Show me the book that you're reading now.
I'm reading this book called A Brief History of Intelligence.
And
And
it is by, just hold it up for me so we
M-
can.
Max Bennett. And it basically is saying that if you really want to understand AI, which all of us want to learn, just
Mhm.
understand how did the human brain actually evolve. It's actually a very significant book. This is a very interesting book you should learn. The other book that I would strongly recommend is, and most of HR managers, we are all used to learning with, we are the experts in dealing with human to human interaction. Now, this is an MIT study with more and more of us where machines are going to take over. how does the human to machine interactions actually happen? And
Hmm.
it's not cut pasting human to human. For example, an accident that happens when a normal human driver happens, he might get out of the sense and say sorry. But what happens when a driverless car meets with an accident? It's not same as that because we judge a human by the intentions and we judge a machine by results. So in this world of AI, everyone speaks about AI doing great things and always the right things. But what happens when AI makes a mistake? It's a very, very different approach. So this book, which is an MIT study, actually speaks about that. Now, one book which I know you will hate me for suggesting it, but you have to read it, is
I,
Determined by Robert.
I love this book because it really talks
Yes,
about every behavior is a, there are so many lenses depending on what you will use. I love his other book also, Why Do Zebras Not
Behave.
Get Ulcers? And
Yeah, that's the
Behave.
first book
Behave
of
is
it.
also in it.
And Bay.
This
Yeah.
all three books are fantastic. I'm a big fan of Sapolsky. He's fantastic.
Yes. At least I would say these are the three books that I can really definitely speak about, which would be a good, gives you a nice little overall feel about this new way of looking at human behavior.
And why aren't you writing a book which combines your wisdom and makes it accessible to us?
Uh, I'm writing a book. I think that would be published this April. Penguin is publishing it. It's called
And what's the book called?
Microstimuli. It's called
Microstimul.
Microstimuli, the new science of persuasion. So it is about in this new world, how do you traditional ways of persuasion doesn't work. And now this is all about a stimuli that works in milliseconds. I can change human behavior. And so this microstimuli, the new science of persuasion. This April, May, the book should be out.
And I can't wait to read it, Biju. Thank you so very much. It's been such a fascinating conversation. Thank you for being here and look forward to staying in touch. Take care. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great talking to you, Abhijit. Thanks a lot. Thank you.